self-control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She caught me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. The claws in my heart, I can't let go, I'm breaking apart, controlling me, controlling me. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to tonight's Paranormal Portal Bedtime Stories from Beyond. I'm glad you guys are here. I started the stream and I was alone for a while. I was like, oh no, wonder if everyone forgot. But then all of a sudden, wow, they all came in at once. So it's great to see you guys. Thanks for being here, being with me on this evening journey. I just got done with 2 hours on Quantum Connections a bit ago, so I'm just kind of had a quick break before I had to get back here and do my own thing, of which I hadn't really even prepped for. So I was throwing this together and chewing on a chicken drumstick at the same time. And now I'm here with you. So I hope you're all set. I hope you're all comfy. Hope you brush your teeth, because it's time for bed. And here I am. Sorry, I was just responding to Pixie in the chat as well. Yeah, she said that last night's episode, ladies and gentlemen, something weird happened on YouTube. I don't know what's going on. I didn't even know this was possible, but something really freaky happened. But this is the portal, so I should take it in stride. But I don't know what happened, but I got done with the episode last night, and I'm updating it, and it's processing, and I'm not really paying attention to the video list. But then I start seeing these comments coming through on Lisa Martin's episode from Saturday night, and I'm like, oh, let me check those out. But they were in reference to last night's show, and I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? I look at the video list. YouTube had created 2 streams from last night's live stream. So it created 2 videos from last night's live stream, and was it takes forever after you're done with the video. I can't say forever. They're actually very quick, and they do a good job, but they have to process the video feed to get it ready for video on demand, and that usually takes about a half hour. So I'm looking at this and going, how are there 2 episodes, one of which has the correct show title, correct name, correct description, correct title, correct description, the other of which has Lisa Martin's show title from Saturday night, Lisa Martin's show title, and Lisa Martin's description. And I'm like, how in the hell is that even possible? Same timestamps on both videos, same exact lengths, and they're processing. So as soon as I see that, I make the Lisa Martin error stream, I make that unlisted. I just turned it off. I maybe should have made it private. I don't know what the hell I should have done, but maybe I should have deleted it before the other one was done processing, but I didn't. And I just made it unlisted. I'm like, well, this is weird. I'll have to look at this because, it's one of those things. YouTube counts views and all that stuff. So I was like, well, I don't want to lose that. So I'll just make it hidden and it shouldn't be a problem. Well, then I get a flag from YouTube. The processing video of the good one that was all set up correctly, they gave me a duplication warning that I duplicated, was trying to upload a duplicate video. Like, I only did 1 stream. You guys created 2 of them, and now you're giving me an error. So it took me forever to find the email, and I've sent them emails. I've tried. So basically the good episode, the good version, errored out. It said upload failed because of duplication. And the other one had the wrong images, wrong descriptions, and everything. So I decided I emailed them about it with screenshots to show them what happened, explaining what happened. And then I've changed the image and the title and description of the other one, made that one live again. But for some reason, that image just doesn't want to update. So I changed the updated image, but it still looks like Lisa Martin from Saturday night's episode. So very, very strange stuff. I don't know. Maybe you're not interested in that. Maybe you are. I don't know. But it's just been one of those things like, oh, God, really? And thank you to Jess Mink. You ordered a T-shirt. I really, really appreciate it. That's awesome. And, of course, Jim had ordered a hat. Now, for both of you guys, just know I'm trying to get these to you as quickly as I can. However, the guy that usually does my T-shirts and hats, a good friend of mine, he's having equipment problems, so I'm trying to find a plan B as quick as I can. So please bear with me. I'm getting them to you as quickly as I can. But that's the problem. His equipment's down. I didn't know about that. Otherwise, I would have turned off the orders until he was back in business. But he isn't, and it may be spring until he is, so I got to find a plan B. So, but thank you guys for your orders. If you'd rather have a refund, let me know. Message me. I can certainly refund your money. And no harm, no foul. But if you're willing to wait, I'll get them to you eventually, I promise. So, all the laundry's out of the way now. We are here. It is time. And we're going to talk about things the darkness hides tonight. And that's just a fancy way of saying ghost stories. I try to be creative with my titling because, I think a title grabs attention. So I was doing Ghost Encounters 1, 2, 3, and then I thought, maybe I should just try to be a little more creative, come up with creative titles because, if I just add a number every time, it just, looks kind of silly. So that's what I'm doing, and that's what we're talking about tonight. And I don't know what it is about nighttime, guys. I don't know what it is. Why? We've discussed it many times. I've thrown out theories. Why is the night, when people hunt ghosts? Why is the night when people experience the most stuff? And honestly, I don't think it really matters, day or night. I know I've personally had plenty of paranormal experiences during the daytime. It doesn't matter whether the sun is out or not. I believe these things are around and they don't really care whether it's day or night. If they want to do something, they're going to do it. The thing is that I don't think we are as aware in the daytime because, and I said this before, it's just, I think that we're so distracted in our day-to-days. We're not really aware of the things going on around us as much because we are focused on what we're doing. Our days are busy, and with our modern society keeping us more productive, you can do more, you can do more, you can do more, you can do more with less. And it just keeps people pushing harder and harder and faster and faster. Well, as you're doing those things, sometimes it works to your advantage because you kind of get into this Zen state where you're a little more, your mind is relaxed because you're doing a repetitive task. And sometimes things will come to you that way. But for visual things, for things that are, maybe happening around you, like something moving, you may be just so glued to what you're doing that you're missing it. Now, at nighttime, we're in our relaxed state. We're in our unwinding state for the most part. I'm just talking generalizations here. But for the most part, we're kind of just doing our stuff. and relaxing, watching TV, or surfing the net, or watching Paranormal Portal, and then something moves, or you get a little flash of light or a shadow move, and it's like, wait a minute, something's there. So I think that when we're not being pushed, we're more receptive. And of course, in the nighttime, there's less ambient noise. Usually at night, it's quieter all around. People are not, fixing their cars or mowing their lawns or doing those kind of things. So there's less ambient distraction and noise. So maybe those subtle sounds that you don't hear so well during the day are much more loud at night. Have you guys ever gone into like a forest, and when it's really kind of peaceful and there isn't all this mechanical noise going on, and just sat back and thought, wow, it's so beautiful, it's so peaceful, and you can hear so much better, the colors seem brighter? Well, I think it has a lot to do with us, that the colors are the same, but our perceptions are that much more open when we're in that kind of setting. So I think the same thing goes with the paranormal. It's when our distractions are less, we are receptive to more. So I think that's the thing, but let's discuss some of it with a bunch of stories here. So anyway, the first one is when I was, what's that? Oh man, I got to get my glasses fixed. All right, when I was 8 years old, my mom and dad bought a home located in Burlingame. It looks like Burlingame. I don't know. I'm sorry. This is even in the U.S., and I'm beating the hell out of the pronunciation. It looks like Burlingame, California. And they got a great deal on a house, and they were thrilled at its location and the whole town and everything. I recall the first time I walked in the house, and I said to my mom, "It's so dark in here." And my mom reassured me that a little bit of paint and some new drapes, it would be bright and sunny. And I think that the darkness I noticed wasn't just because of the dark walls and drapes, but there was something much darker hidden in the seams of the house, and the darkness didn't stay hidden for long. Before we moved our belongings into the home, my dad and one of his friends, Dick, sorry, that name always cracks me up. I'm such a child, I'm sorry. Went into the house to refinish the hardwood floors, and they were in for a challenging set of experiences. When they turned on the sander, the radio would blast, and when they turned off the radio, the light would go on. Then the electricity would shut off. They checked the fuses, but none of them were burned out. My dad called the power company, and the man came out and said there was nothing wrong with the connection from the power pole to the house, and he told my dad that he needed to call an electrician. The electrician witnessed the strangeness and unexplainable relation between unrelated switches and the response from remote locations throughout the house, and the electrician told my dad that the entire house needed to be rewired. To their surprise, after this announcement, all the electrical appliances and lights worked exactly as they were supposed to. All returned to normal operation at that time. The stunt repeated many times over the years, and we just had to wait it out because there wasn't anything wrong with the fuses, fuse box, the connection to the power pole. There was no technical explanation. I will say that being in totally dark house due to the actions of invisible intruders was really scary, and we were at their mercy, and they had little or no mercy at all. After we moved into the house, we immediately noted that at times it sounded as if someone was walking across the floor, or there would be what sounded like knocking on various doors throughout the house. The back door would open and slam closed, which would be followed by what sounded like footsteps coming up the stairs. And my parents explained to me that these sounds were the sounds of the house settling. It can happen. Often when I went to bed at night, I would hear heavy breathing right by my face. That's just creepy. God, that's so creepy. My parents told me this is what the water heater sounded like at night, and it was just heating the water. I would hear my mother call, and when I answered, she would say she didn't call me, or vice versa. She'd hear me, and I hadn't called her. I often found auburn hairs in my bedroom. I couldn't figure this out. I didn't know anybody with auburn hair. My parents became acquainted with the next door neighbors, and they commented to mom and dad that they hoped that they lived longer than the other people that had moved in. Jesus. The house had always been sold, never rented, but it was rare for any family to live there for more than 3 months. The neighbors had lived next door for over 20 years. And there were times when I woke up with someone holding on to my ankles and pulling me off the end of the bed. This absolutely terrified me. When I told my parents, they assured me that I was just having nightmares. I woke up in the mornings to find pieces clipped from my hair. This left short, jagged pieces that I couldn't style, and my mom told me this was from the pin curls I used. Excuse me, I had to cough. One afternoon when I was in the bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was staring at me. And this gave me the creeps, so I decided to go out in the living room, and in that, I felt so uneasy. I stepped down on the first step in front of the door and reached around the corner to turn on the light. And when I turned on the light, I saw a young woman sitting on the bed right next to where I had been sitting. She had long auburn hair, and she was transparent, but I didn't believe in ghosts. My parents had told me over and over that there was no such thing, and now I was faced with the terrifying reality of a ghost sitting on my bed. I ran to the bathroom, slammed and locked the door, and then it dawned on me that if she was a ghost, and what they say about ghosts was true, she could walk through the wall, and I'd be locked inside with her. I unlocked the door and ran to the living room in the front of the house. The next morning, I told my parents about the experience, and they exchanged glances, and then they told me that they knew that the house was haunted. The ghost I described to them is the one they call Florence. It took them about 3 years to believe the house was haunted, and they didn't believe it until they had exhausted themselves by sneaking through the house trying to find the intruders making all the noise, and never finding anything. Then, one night, when they had just gotten into bed, turned off the lights, and above the end of their bed were 2 floating heads staring at them. They both saw these apparitions and couldn't deny what they saw. This put them on the track of using a Ouija board, to try to communicate with the ghosts. Oh man, that's a bad plan. Knowing what I do now about the response to this board by earthbound spirits, I am certain this practice only made things worse. There were many ghosts. I only saw 2 fully manifested apparitions, but my parents saw and experienced many more. I saw things, but only 2 specific ones. It was common experience to see items such as books fly across the room. One time my mom was taking a nap on the couch in the living room, and the couch seemed to be shaking. She opened her eyes to discover that the couch was being transported by floating across the room with her on top of it. Wow. One could explain doors opening and closing by themselves due to not being attached properly, and a breeze caused it to open and close, and this explanation could not be applied to the sliding door between the second and third bedrooms. The sliding door often slammed open or closed, and this was very unsettling. Quite a few times my parents came into the room in the middle of the night to see why I was screaming. I was not aware of screaming. As far as I knew, I was soundly asleep. They would describe the screaming as if I had seen bloody heads rolling across the floor. There were times my parents acted out of character, and they would be much harsher than one would expect. Shortly before my mom passed away, she told me that the change of life made her strange. I asked her what she meant, and she told me that one time she was chatting across the picket fence with our elderly neighbor. She said that it took all of her strength to force herself to go back into the house without attacking and strangling the neighbor. I told her, Mom, that wasn't the change of life, it was the ghosts. The ghosts made them say and do things that were out of character. I would see it in their eyes and their mannerisms, and they were different, not themselves. I experienced times when I was attacked, pushed, and manhandled by the ghosts, and I told my parents, and they told me that I was letting my imagination run away with me. See, I don't get that. The parents acknowledge that there's a haunting, but then They go back to the imagination thing. Oh, man. The invalidation of my experiences made life very difficult for me, as there was nowhere to turn to for help. Family and friends that visited were often treated to ghost experiences, from simple footsteps or door knocking to having their blankets pulled off of them in the middle of the night by unseen hands. One time my aunt was at our house for my birthday. It was too late for her to drive all the way home, but she didn't want to sleep in the house. She slept out in our travel trailer with my teenage slumber party. One time we were watching television with Hans Holzer and Sybil Leek were visiting San Francisco, and they were ghost hunters, and they announced that if anyone thought their house was haunted, that they'd be glad to come and get rid of the ghosts. I begged my parents to call them. They didn't want to because they didn't want anyone in the area to know the house was haunted. They said that when they sold the house, that such information would prevent them from getting a good price. I was so hopeful and then crestfallen. When my parents retired and put the house on the market, the ghosts became especially active. We had occupied the house for 15 years, and I think the ghosts were pretty happy with the arrangement. He told my mom that he wanted to move into the travel trailer. It must be his dad. So they didn't have to be concerned with constantly cleaning and preparing for the stream of realtors streaming through the house with potential buyers. Then one morning, my dad announced that he was lowering the price on the house by a considerable amount. We all tried to discourage him from doing so, since they were counting on the profit from the sale to be able to buy retirement property and perhaps build a home. He wouldn't listen to our arguments. The house sold that day. Mom and I were sitting in the kitchen while Dad walked the new owners to their car, and Mom and I heard the back door open and slam closed. We heard footsteps coming up the back steps. We got up together and looked down the hall to the stairway, and we could still hear the footsteps ascending the stairs, but there was no one to be seen. After they moved all their things out of the house, handed over the keys, and had left the property for good, Dad confided why he insisted on moving into the trailer and lowering the price on the house. The night before they moved out into the trailer, my dad was startled awake by a hand over his mouth and nose, and he was being suffocated by the man ghost, who we all came to call Dave. Dad was a strong guy, but he said that it took all the strength he had to wrestle away from that grip of the ghost, and Dad turned to me, apologized for not believing me. We heard that the first renter in the house was a minister. I was elated, thinking that the minister might pray the ghosts out of the house. The minister moved out almost as soon as he moved in. After a series of short-term renters in the house was replaced by an apartment building, and neighbors told my parents that the house had been moved, and I don't know if the house was moved, and if it was moved, I wondered if the ghosts go with the house or haunt the apartment building built on the site. I know I would never want to go back and find out for myself. There you go. There's that whole parenting thing. I mean, it's damaging to kids to not believe them, you know. It really is. And I'm not saying that kids don't invent all kinds of crazy stuff. They do, but I think you still have to listen, and you have to sound interested. You can't just dismiss it and go, "Hell, you're screwy. Get back to bed, screwy." You know? That's not going to work out well. You're going to have some dysfunctional child growing up, because they need to talk. They need to understand. They need to process this. And if you're dismissing it and telling them it's imagination or it's a dream, then, you know, you're not giving them that avenue to discuss and to, you know, try to come to terms with it. And you're also making them question their own sanity. So it's very important to listen to your children, whatever they may say. So, what does that say? So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. Sorry, I'm getting a message from somebody here. Oh, okay. Well, that's weird. Huh, okay. Some kind of volume issue on one of my streams, I guess, from the Saturday night show. I'm not sure, but she may be at the beginning. I know we had real problems with with Lisa's connection at the beginning of the show, so we had her call into the call board. I didn't know it was bad after that. I don't know if any of you guys in the chat room were listening to Saturday's show. I did listen to it, but I didn't notice any ups and downs of volume. But it's the portal. I don't know. Sometimes the weirdest things happen, and there isn't always a reason why. But that was a really long story, but I think it was a good story, and I think it's plausible. I don't think there's a whole lot of embellishments, just gut feeling. But, again, it's tough. It's tough to live in a place like that. I don't know. It's just, I've not lived in something where I've been attacked. But again, I told the story of my cousin, who was essentially attacked when they left that knife blade on the stairs and he stepped on it. But weirdness. Next one here is also a little long. Let me look at these other ones. God, that one's a little long too. How long do you guys want to put up with me tonight? That one's a little long too. I might have picked all the long stories tonight. There's not a quick one in the works. So I better get going. In 2003, I had a girlfriend who had just moved into a manufactured house. I pretty much lived with her, and my life was miserable at the time, just to add that. As the weeks went by, she told me that she thought that the house might be haunted, and she kept hearing noises and seeing things out of the corner of her eyes. I just chalked it up to all of her overactive imagination. Sorry. And as more weeks went by, I started to believe that what she was saying. The house just seemed like it was somewhat active. I too was hearing these noises at night and seeing things in my peripheral vision, more so than at my parents' house or just most anywhere else. But yet I was still skeptical until a series of 3 nights, all 3 nights in a row. It wasn't unusual for me to stay with her 4 and 5 nights in a row, but something was different about those 3 nights. We headed for bed around 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and for some reason, I was having trouble sleeping. My girl was asleep in minutes, and at around 11 p.m., I began to hear a very faint but strange noise. It sounded as if someone was slamming a very big metal door shut, open and shut, all over and over again. And, like one of those big dungeon doors from an old medieval castle, not unlike someone smashing a sledgehammer against a steel beam. Very strange, I thought, but very faint, as if in the distance, and I tried to ignore it, but it just wouldn't stop, and it wouldn't go away, and as the time was passing, it was slowly getting louder, as if it was approaching me or something. About an hour passed, and I was relieved when it finally went away. I told my girlfriend about it the next morning, and she said that she had heard nothing. Wednesday evening, more of the same. We went to sleep at around 10, but yet I still found it hard to go to sleep. And the noise persisted this night too, but it was noticeably louder than the night before. I even awoke my girlfriend to ask her if she could hear it, but the strange sound, and she looked astonished. She had no clue what I was talking about. I was thinking that I was starting to go crazy or something, and it was strange because the noise only persisted with my eyes closed and would slowly get louder and dissipate within an hour. I thought maybe it was some weird dream or something, and I didn't know what to think about it, but then came Thursday evening. As we were heading for bed, I became sort of apprehensive about going to bed, but I went along and to bed anyways with my girl. And around that same time as the nights before, at first I was relieved that this night seemed quiet, but then it started. This night was different than the first 2 nights. The noise started significantly louder this time. The noise was piercing my ears. The noise was so loud that it made my whole head physically rattle every time it repeated itself. This time I opened my eyes and the noise continued louder and louder. My ears began to hurt very intensely with each clash of metal. How could this be? How could she still be sleeping? It's as loud as a freight train. Then I looked out her bedroom window and froze solid. The noise ceased. What looked like a small human figure more of a black mist seemed to dissipate. I woke my girlfriend and explained to her what had happened, and she looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. She had heard nothing. After this night, I never experienced anything like this again at her house. Something about those 3 nights was not right. I know a couple of things, though. I wasn't dreaming. That noise actually caused me physical pain. In my ears, something was in the doorway of her room. I never again doubted her when she said that she saw or heard something. For the rest of my life, I will never forget those 3 nights. And the house is new. You don't know what happened on the property. You don't know what was there before. Was there other house there before? The last story was kind of interesting because it's like, where does the ghost go? Does it go with the house or does it stay with the property? And that's a great question. And I don't know if anybody can answer that. And maybe it's both. Maybe it's both. Maybe there's some spirits that are attached to the property itself, and some people are attached to the structure. The first story had what sounded like several apparitions haunting. So maybe they're not all just attached to the house. But when the house is on the property, you get a mix. You get both. So in this case, obviously it was a manufactured home. It was new, and still the activity happened. So yeah, it's not just because a house is new is no assurance that something can't go sideways. Because I believe they're always around. They're always looking. They're always wandering. They're always searching for whatever it is they're searching for. They're looking for something. Maybe it's looking for us, looking for opportunity. I don't know. I don't want to, try to make these things out to be completely predatory, because I don't believe they are. But maybe they just get bored. Maybe that's entertaining to start freaking people out. Maybe that's kind of like a joke. Maybe that's, a reality show for them. I don't know. It's hard to understand for sure, but it is interesting. When I was in the 4th grade, my family moved into a house in California on the outside. It looked like any other on the block, but on the inside, it was anything but normal. The layout of the upstairs had been changed by the previous owner and went from a 4-bedroom to one large loft. But there was something else in this house that for the longest time only us kids encountered. On the first day when we moved in, we watched a space rack that was in the back of the counter. It slid across the tiled counter and over the tip at the end of it and crashed onto the floor. Our parents didn't believe us when we told them. That seems to be a theme tonight. Parents don't believe. But they just thought one of us had done it ourselves. But as the weeks went by, things continued. The clock on the kitchen would periodically jump off the wall and onto the refrigerator 3 feet away. Never once did it hit the ground. The TV and stereo would turn on by themselves, tuned it to a station with nothing but static. 3 to 4 times a week, we would hear scratching noises on the east side of the house, and there was no bushes or trees on that side at all. And my sister and I would ever so often hear something moving around in the upstairs closet when no one else was up there. My parents, however, thought this was just all our imagination until one night. My sister and I, along with 2 of my other sisters, were up in her part of the loft one night, which was on the east side of the house, watching a television, and we started to hear music from the music boxes on the other side of the loft, where my other 2 sisters' beds were. They decided to go see what was going on, and as soon as they turned the corner by the stairs, that's when it happened. From outside Keena's window, a voice called out to her in a scratchy whisper. It called her over and over, but the time it called her name the 3rd time, we were already heading down the stairs, followed by my other 2 sisters, who were running because they got to the music boxes and they stopped playing. We ran to our dad, and telling him what had happened, he decided to go check it out, and we followed him up the stairs to the window, all of us moving as one unit, but you could have heard a pin drop with the silence that followed him opening the curtains. On the window was 2 smeared handprints on the outside, and hanging from the beam of the roof was a noose. My dad thought someone had tried to break in and called the police. When they arrived, they checked out the house and surrounding property and found nothing. They told my dad that no one could have gotten to that side of the house from the outside, only from the inside. Was it possible? Only from the inside was it possible. That is when they informed my dad that what had occurred in this house years before. It seemed that the owners prior to the one we got the house from had a teenage daughter, and one day, when they had come home early, they discovered her body swinging from a noose from that very window, and on the outside of the window was 2 smeared handprints. That's all my dad needed to hear. We moved out that week, realizing that for some reason she was still there and did not want any other children in that house. From time to time, I go by that house in Cyprus and always get the feeling something is watching me. But to this day, when I hear something outside the window, I hesitate to look in fear something may be looking back. Creepy. Let's see, we got 2 more. This is one long too. God, I really picked. I'm going to have to start checking these things a little more carefully. I was in a rush tonight, so I just found 4 or 5 stories quick. And there's nothing quick about them. So we're already at 37 minutes. 2 more stories? Yeah, we're all right. You guys still will stick around, won't you? All right. Let's see. I grew up in Indiana, and let's see. My mother and brother Chuck and I were in the living room in our house in the late evening watching television when a loud noise startled us. It was a loud clanging kind of noise from down in the basement. We had a really musty old basement. Half of it was a dirt floor crawl space that opened into the poured concrete part of the basement, and it was just a storage area full of old paint cans, fishing tackle, tools, storm windows, a big freezer that usually held a whole hog or side of beef. That must be important to the story. Excuse me. And we'd pick up twice a year to live off of, and there was a sump pit that water drained into, and the furnace and hot water heater were down there. Hold on, I got a cough. The ceiling of it was just exposed floor joists and the ground floor rooms, and one of which we were sitting in when we heard this loud clanging noise from the basement. Startled, we went down to see what was going on. The stairs had no backs, just the treads, no risers. Our dog, a big German Shepherd, was always afraid to go down in the basement. She'd almost pitch a fit to have to just go past that door to get out into the backyard. But there we were, me and Mom and Chuck, standing on those open back stairway looking in at the basement floor where a single horseshoe was laying. The cement was chipped where it hit. It was spray painted silver. We had a silver pair and a red pair for playing horseshoes, and these were real ones, heavy. We kept them hanging on the pair of nails driven into one of the exposed floor joists. As we stood there, the second silver one fell onto the first one. That was startling, freaky weird. Just as it happened, I saw a whitish line shoot up from the horseshoe already on the floor. Nobody else saw it, but to me it looked just like some kind of shape reached up and tapped the other one, sort of like looking at the thin man sideways. I can remember us talking back and forth about maybe us running through the dining room to the stairs might have knocked it off the wall. But we were on the stairs when it fell, and the nail it fell from was still just like it ought to be. A big 10-penny nail stuck in at about a 45-degree angle. The horseshoes would have had to have been walked up the nail and gotten themselves over the big nail head. My brother was taller than the rest of us and he grabbed the nail to see if it was loose or could be twisted, and it was tight as ever. We hung the silver ones back up, and on the same nail they fell from, and went back upstairs. I think we spent the rest of the evening waiting to hear if they were going to fall again or not. They never fell again that I know of, and it had been at least a month since anyone has played horseshoes, so they'd been on that nail for a long time. Yeah, that's something wanting you to notice. Something wants you to notice something. But sometimes those things are just attention getters. All right, and this brings us to the last one for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This one is, when I was a kid, my dad would invite neighborhood families to the house for the evening, and where other families would just play games like cards and board games, my father would come up with the idea of rocking the table about halfway through the evening just to have something different to do. I don't know what rocking the table about halfway thought the evening? I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. And that night I remember most clearly when I was about 7 years old, it was decided that I would rock the table with him. The table we would use was the dining room table, and this table was a very large cherry wood table that set 12 people. And as we were a family of 10, we lived in a large 5-bedroom house on 40 acres of property, and the rooms were all really large, and the dining room was no exception. That night we put all the chairs back against the wall to have them out of the way, and then moved the table to the middle of the room, and I was standing at one end of the table with my palms on the table at about elbow length from the end of the table with my body not touching it, and my father stood at the other end and also had put his hands on the table at elbow's length, or more onto the table also, where he in no way touched the table other than just the palms of his hands. It was I think he means quiet. It says quite. It was quiet in the room as my dad told me to clear my mind and only think over and over again, if there is someone here, rock the table. And that's what I did. It was slow at first, but the table kind of moved just a little bit, like someone was pushing against it as if they were trying to get up from the chair. Then the table started raising up off the floor from my father's side of the room. I might add that there was no way I could have done this to have it tip towards me, and with him only having his palms on the table, there was no way that he could do it either. He started to ask questions that would be yes and no answers. He said, if it's a no, rock 1 time. If it's a yes, rock 2 times. The question and answers only went on till he thought it would be fun to see if we could get them to put the table up on one leg and go around in a circle on the one leg. He asked if they would do that for us tonight, and the answer to that question was a bone-jarring yes. The table started rocking back and forth very hard for just a few seconds, till it got up so far that my dad had to move to the side of the table to keep his hands on it, and it was tipped up on 2 legs on that side, on my side, and stayed that way for 2 to 3 seconds, and then tipped onto one of those legs and stood that way for a second or two, and then started to turn slowly, and we had to walk around it to keep our hands on it. At first I was just walking, then I had to run to keep up with it. Needless to say, the neighbors that had come to the house were terrified of what they were seeing, as never once did my father have anything more in contact with the table than the palms of his hands. And they knew that there was no way that I could have done what they were seeing. The table was going too fast for us to keep up, and I lost hold of it and let it go, and it came down on all 4 legs and just stood still. I can still see my stepmother's face when she looked at her table to make sure it was okay after what it had been put through. That was the only time I ever agreed to rock the table with my father, with people from the neighborhood at the house, as that kind of put me at a disadvantage, to say the least, with the kids I went to school with. Wow. Okay, so that's kind of a divination thing or an oracle of sorts, the table rocking. I'd heard that, but with smaller tables, I didn't understand. I didn't understand what they were talking about at first, but yeah, I have heard of that practice. I don't know anything about it. Table tipping. What did he call it? Table rocking? I've heard table tipping. Yeah, he calls it rocking the table. So very strange, but there's lots of things like that out there. So I guess that wraps up the show for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Bedtime Stories from Beyond. How far did we make it? 46 minutes. So it's never a quickie like I intended, but I hope it was good all the same. So I remember on Friday night, we'll be doing the Psychic Roundtable here on the portal. That's the night when we're on TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live as well. So there will be commercial breaks, but I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be a lot of fun, and I hope we just have a great time and a great discussion, which I have no doubt will be the case. But I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, and I'm just looking to make sure I'm not missing something like last night. Last night I get done and I look over and there's a super chat, but no, we're good tonight. Okay, so you guys take care, be good. I'll be back again tomorrow night with more of the Bedtime Stories from Beyond. And maybe I'll find some shorter stories for tomorrow night. But anyway, take care, guys, and have a great Tuesday. And thank you so much for being here with me. It's just always a blast. So good night, everybody.